Islam doesn't just spread through voluntary conversion. It spreads through migration, reproduction, political organization, and eventual demands for implementation of Islamic law. This is the pattern throughout history. And it's the pattern we're seeing in Western countries right now. The process is methodical. It starts with immigration. Muslims move into non-Muslim countries, initially in small numbers. They're welcomed because Western liberal values include tolerance for religious diversity. Then, the population grows through continued immigration and higher birth rates. This is not controversial. Muslim families in the West have significantly higher birth rates than non-Muslim families. It's demographic mathematics. As the population grows, Muslim communities begin to organize politically. They form advocacy groups. They establish mosques and Islamic centers. They build parallel institutions that serve their communities. Again, nothing inherently wrong with this. It's what immigrant communities do. But here's where it gets concerning. Alongside community building, there are systematic demands for accommodation of Islamic practices that conflict with Western norms. Demands for halal food in schools and institutions. Demand for prayer spaces and time off for religious observance. Demands for gender-segregated facilities. Demands for exemptions from curriculum that conflicts with Islamic teachings. Initially, these seem like reasonable requests for religious accommodation, but they're part of a pattern of establishing Islamic norms as requirements that non-Muslims must accommodate. Then come the demands for legal accommodation, recognition of Islamic marriage practices that might include polygamy or child marriage, attempts to implement Sharia law for personal status issues within Muslim communities, pressure against criticism of Islam framed as hate speech that should be restricted. We're seeing all of this in Europe right now. Britain has Sharia councils operating parallel to the legal system. France has neighborhoods where French law is barely enforced and Islamic norms dominate. Sweden has Muslim majority areas that police describe as dangerous and difficult to patrol. This is what happens when you import large populations with a religious political ideology that is fundamentally incompatible with Western liberal values. The ideology doesn't adapt to the West. It demands that the West adapt to it. And Western liberals, in their infinite stupidity, accommodate every demand because they've been taught that all cultures are equal, that criticism of non-Western practices is racism, that Western values are oppressive. So they allow the establishment of parallel systems. They restrict free speech to avoid offending Muslims. They turn blind eye to practices that violate Western norms because enforcing those norms would be Islamophobic. The Muslim Brotherhood has explicitly stated their strategy for Western countries: build Muslim populations through immigration and birth rates, establish Islamic institutions, gain political influence, and eventually implement Islamic law. This isn't conspiracy theory. It's in their own strategic documents. And it's working. Because Western liberals are so paralyzed by guilt and so committed to multiculturalism that they can't recognize a religious political ideology is using their own values against them.